Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a deep dive to unplug from the invisible economic forces that literally dictate our daily lives. You go to work, you pay your taxes, you swipe your card. But how often do we actually step back and look at the massive financial matrix running the whole show? We're going to break down the hidden traps, the algorithms, and the exact leverage you need to understand.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Where is your money right now? Honestly, if you just deposited your paycheck, you probably picture it sitting perfectly safe in some giant steel vault down at your local bank, right? Maybe guarded by a dragon? Well, as it turns out, that assumption couldn't be further from the truth.
Which brings us to part one, the illusion of money.
So here's how the system actually works behind the curtain. It's known as fractional reserve banking. And really, banks are just financial matchmakers. When you deposit $1,000, the bank doesn't just lock it away in a safe. They keep a tiny fraction on hand and immediately turn around and lend, say, $900 of it to someone else who wants to go buy a jet ski. They're relying entirely on the fact that not everyone is going to ask for their money back at the exact same time. But when they do, like we all saw during the massive 2008 crash, the entire system can quickly crumble.
And it actually gets even wilder than that. Currency itself, it's fundamentally just a social construct. Think about it. The only real difference between a crisp dollar bill and a stick you find out in your backyard is our shared societal belief that the paper holds value. Sure, governments print it and central banks heavily regulate it to stop extreme inflation from turning it into monopoly money, but at its core, the money we're all chasing every single day relies purely on human trust. Moving on to part two, the credit card trap. $1.2 trillion. That's the staggering total U.S. credit card debt stuck in the system right now in 2025. And a lot of that is driven by average interest rates just hovering above 20%. The psychological trap here is actually hidden in plain sight, right on your monthly bill. It's the minimum payment. Banks purposely highlight that tiny minimum payment to keep you rolling over your remaining balance. You pay the $25, you avoid the late fee, and you feel okay about it. But the interest compounds rapidly. The longer you take to repay, the more pure profit the bank generates off you. And this brilliantly illustrates how the plastic in our wallets actually operates. There are two main networks powering it all. In an open-loop system, like Visa and MasterCard, they act as a digital middleman connecting four parties: you, your bank, the merchant, and the merchant's bank. Visa is so dominant that they essentially collect a 25-cent toll on every $100 spent globally. It's wild. Meanwhile, in a closed-loop system, like American Express and Discover, they act as both the payment network and the lending bank. Because Amex controls that entire loop, they gather incredibly deep data on your specific spending habits. They charge higher merchant fees and then use that to heavily target big spenders with premium-tailored perks. But who really pays for those amazing perks? Well, those free flights and hotel stays are actually just psychological bait designed to increase your spending. Merchants are getting absolutely crushed by the hidden swipe fees those networks charge. So to survive, stores have to raise their retail prices across the board. What this actually means is that people who pay with cash are paying extra to subsidize the luxurious perks enjoyed by premium credit card users. At the end of the day, the financial industry always wins. Let's step into part three, the shadowy credit algorithm. This three-digit number is basically your invisible passport to adulthood. Your FICO score isn't really about how wealthy you are. It's entirely about how much lenders can trust you. It's calculated through a specific mix. 35% is your payment history, so do you pay on time? 30% is the amount you owe. And then smaller slices account for your credit age, credit mix, and new credit applications. To put it simply, your credit score is kind of like a pet dog. If you totally ignore it, it's going to make a huge mess of your life. But if you take care of it, feed it on time, and manage it responsibly, it proves to lenders that you're trustworthy, instantly opening doors to housing and affordable loans. However, the system definitely has its profound flaws. As critics often point out, intentional racism that happened decades ago can literally get baked into the cake. Now, defenders of the system correctly point out that the algorithm itself is completely blind. It doesn't look at race, gender, or income. It only looks at hard financial data to accurately assess risk. But critics highlight that structural inequalities, like a historical lack of generational credit, can be inherited. Because the system relies entirely on past performance, starting with a blank slate or inherited debt can leave millions of Americans completely unscorable or starting at a really severe disadvantage. Now, we aren't taking a side here, but it is absolutely vital to understand how the rules of this algorithm impact different people across the board.
All right, part 4, wealth, time, and compounding.
So, the crucial point here is understanding the difference between these two forces. Simple interest is pretty straightforward. It's just a flat fee for borrowing or lending. But compound interest, that's when your money creates clones of itself, and then those clones go out and demand their own rent. When you owe high interest on a credit card, compound interest is like a slow-burning fire just destroying your finances. But when you flip the script and invest your money, compound interest becomes a literal cheat code for duplicating your wealth over decades. Building wealth also requires mastering the perception of value. Think about a rock. It has zero material cost and zero societal value. What about gold? It's really just a shiny rock with a super low functional cost, but because society perceives it as rare, its value is sky high. Or take a Gucci bag. It has a moderate material cost to actually produce, but it commands an extremely high societal value. True wealth generation comes from understanding that value is just a social construct. If you can create immense perceived value, just like top brands or tech creators do, society will gladly hand over their money. But you've got to protect that created wealth from the silent thief, inflation. Keeping your cash stuffed under a mattress just guarantees its purchasing power will slowly erode year after year. A smart strategy to beat it really depends on your age. If you're under 25, you have the time horizon to take high risks. We're talking mutual funds and crypto to aim for massive compound growth. From 35 to 50, you want a balanced mix, maybe adding in public provident funds or safe deposits. And 50 plus, safety first, prioritizing high fixed deposits and low-risk assets. You've got to diversify your investments across time to build an unbreakable financial portfolio. Which brings us to our final section, leverage and value creation. Now, what's really interesting about this concept is this core philosophy. True wealth is created when you stop trading time directly for money and start using leverage to scale your value. Most people, they're stuck in this endless loop of trading 1 hour of time for one paycheck. But the absolute top earners, they figure out how to completely decouple their time from their income. They use tools, media, code, and technology. They use leverage to make their single hour of work worth millions. And honestly, there is absolutely no greater modern leverage than artificial intelligence. Right now, you can build a software as a service, a SaaS, in literally 15 minutes. Using AI tools like Rocket, you don't even need a team of expensive developers anymore. You just prompt the AI to generate a functional template, visually customize the layout without writing a single line of code, integrate a payment system like Stripe, and deploy it live to the world instantly. What used to take months and thousands of dollars can now generate real, scalable revenue from just a single afternoon of work. That is the ultimate application of modern leverage. So, we've unmasked the systems today. You've seen exactly how money is an illusion, how the credit card industry traps you, how these shadowy algorithms rate your trustworthiness, and how compounding and modern AI leverage can ultimately set you free. So I'll leave you with this final provocative thought. Now that you know the rules of the financial game, how will you play it? Will you remain a pawn inside their matrix? Or will you use this knowledge to become the architect of your own wealth? The choice is entirely yours. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep building.